Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Orphanlast, aka Skylar Madison, and today we're going to be talking about dividing an area into fourths, okay? But in the previous video, I went ahead and talked about how you can divide an area into thirds. Now, we have this area. If we were to just draw an X within this area, from the corners to the opposing corner, we would find the center of this area. And as I covered last time, basically we'd go ahead and we'd draw an area here. And in order to find thirds, you just draw an arrow from the center going out towards the corner on either end, and then you create an arrow that goes down. And I mentioned how these collinear lines, you want to look at these collinear lines in order to find thirds, and that would allow you to be able to find thirds right here, okay? So once again, you would ignore the central line and you would have thirds. But the thing is that in order to find quarters, like 1/4 of the way, it's the exact same symbol, actually. Only that if you actually pay attention, instead of trying to find the collinear lines, what you're trying to find is the X that exists here and the X that exists right here. This intersection right here and this intersection right here is halfway. So if I were to undo what I just did here and just draw out here, we have 1/4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So thirds would look like this. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so the symbol that we use in order to find 1/4 is the exact same symbol that we use in order to find 1/3. Okay? And so, when is it really helpful to find thirds? This seems to be a question that has been posed to me somewhat recently. Why would you want to find 1/3? Well, you know, trying to measure out 1/3, only being able to divide in even numbers is pretty impossible. So it's important to be able to divide an area in even numbers and odd numbers. So let's go ahead and create a vanishing point really quick here with the assistant tool. Okay, so I went ahead and created a vanishing point. And so, you know, you could be super accurate with every single measurement, which, you know, you can, and I would kind of recommend you to do that. You're going to run into a lot less problems along the way, but ultimately you have to be able to balance the number of measurements you make with the time that you have in order to finish the image. So if I were to draw a windowsill that's split up into thirds, what I would do is I would first go ahead and create the area. Alright, excellent. So we have an area to work with. We need to find out where the center is, of course. Okay, so we found the center, and you don't necessarily need to draw the arrow. You could just go ahead and just draw an X if you wanted to, but it's easier to visualize the arrows once you start having a bunch of lines contradicting one another all over the place. It can be useful being able to just draw out the arrows instead of the X's. But anyways, so here is the 1/3 mark right here, and right here is the 1/3 mark right here. Look for the collinear intersections. Always look for the collinear intersections whenever you're creating an area and trying to divide it up into thirds, okay? So that's pretty important. So let's go ahead and create another layer. Trying to think of where is the 1/3 mark and trying to eyeball it, it just doesn't work. You have to do the measurement lines. You have to. And so now I'm just going to go ahead and just decide I want this to be a windowsill. So I'm just going to go ahead and just draw out kind of a border around this. And ultimately I feel at this point I've done all of the careful measurements that I need to make. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball the rest at this point. Okay, so that makes a decent sketch for a windowsill. Okay, so let me go ahead and create another layer and lower the opacity of the blue layer a little bit. And now I can just go ahead and draw this out a lot more three-dimensionally. So that does kind of come off as a pretty convincing windowsill. Trying to do that with just dividing it into fourths is nearly impossible. So it is important to be able to divide odd and even, okay? So let's get into drawing the symbol for separating an area into fourths. So I've sped this video up to being about 30 times speed, and yeah, basically what I learned throughout the process of me working on this piece here was, you know, making a split complex image in thirds was a lot easier than trying to do the same thing for an image split into fourths. No matter how well you organize your layers panel, if it's a horrid mess, then it doesn't matter. Like, it's just a nightmare to work with, regardless of how organized you are. There does come a point to where you can only be so organized. So there was some frustration. If I do this again, which I know that I will, I think that in order to split the complex image, I'm just going to use a actual layer mask. Now, I believe the layer masks are working with raster technology, but yeah, I don't know. There might be a way to use a Boolean function to maybe get it to be masked within a specific area. I don't know. I'll have to look into that a little bit. But this was very difficult to work on. And just to quickly address some questions that I kind of see anticipated coming my way. What does this have to do with the Teach Me to Draw series? That's what I think some people might have in their mind. These symbols I expect you guys to memorize. You need to memorize these symbols that I'm creating. And I'm creating for you guys a sheet. I'm going to actually upload an image onto DeviantArt that you guys can download, print, whatever. Full resolution, everything, okay? So, free. And it also is educational. It won't just look cool, it'll actually, you know, teach you something. These symbols are the artist's numbers. They're how we divide areas up. This is how we can look at a reference in perspective and measure proportions. Okay? And there are some people that are a lot more technical at it than I am. I'm only interested in approximate proportions. Everything else can just go to the wayside. I don't care. But a fair amount of accuracy is important. You do have to measure some things out, otherwise you get yourself into trouble. And the logic that's needed in order to do perspective drawing. Think of it as the artist's game of chess. Nobody's heard about it because there's only one person playing it. It's not like a team effort or a adversarial effort, like with chess or something like that. It's not that type of game. It's very unique. That's what perspective is, if you can think of it that way. It's very difficult, but it's totally rewarding. A specific set of logic. A perspective may not have the answers that you want, but it does have all of the answers. And that's the frustrating thing. But it's like by the time that you reach your final image, and when you start getting proficient to the point to where you know you're good at it, and you finally see your finished image, man, that feels so good. It feels so good. It's such a hugely rewarding experience, and you know, it makes all of the struggle worthwhile. It really does. I guarantee it. It's like, and all of the frustration while making the image totally forgotten. Suddenly it's so forgotten. Because in the end, what you got is something that just, it's amazing. You created something, you know? I went on a hike with a bunch of teenagers a few years ago. All they wanted to do was vandalize shacks and stuff like that. It's just... destroying something will never be as rewarding as creating something. Does that make sense? You want to know what I find interesting here? The brightest part on those white lines is where the black comes to the central point. It seems like it's brighter there, but it's not. Isn't that fascinating? Just the way colors interweave and interact, it's fascinating to me. And here I am just playing with graphic design for my thumbnail here. And excellent. Anyways, guys, that pretty much concludes it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. If you'd like to get more notifications from me, feel free to click on the bell, or go ahead and follow me on Twitter. A link is supplied in the video description below. And if you guys would like to see more of my content, feel free to take a look at anything appearing on the screen right now. Thank you very much for your time.